Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy, and yay, Richard Cohen is here. We can't even remember the last time we recorded together.
Too long. It's been way
Or-
too long, my darling.
Yes, I'm so glad you're here. Yay.
Yes, me
And
too.
we just spent a lot of time just chatting before we hit record because it's been so long since we were looking at each other, I guess.
Shame on us.
I know. Yeah. Well, welcome back.
Yay, it's great to be here.
Yay. So we're gonna we'll just jump right in, I guess. We're gonna talk about a quote that comes from a book that I've kind of been picking up and putting down and picking up and putting down for a little more than a year. But it's called Rethinking Readiness in Early Childhood Education, Implications for Policy and Practice. It's a collection of essays. I think it was published in 2015. Yeah. But we're actually just going to spend time in the foreword and not even really get into the book.
That's right.
This foreword was written by William Ayers, so you know it's going to be worth thinking and talking about.
Revolutionary, probably.
Revolutionary, yeah. I believe it or not, my introduction to William Ayers was in one of my maybe my bachelor's degree courses. And I say believe it or not because there wasn't a lot that was revolutionary in these courses that I took. But I think there's a book that it's like cartoon form, comic strip form about education. I hope I'm not confusing him with someone else. But at any rate, I love him. So
You remember, we've talked about him before on your show.
Yeah.
You remember me telling the story of my introduction to Bill Ayers?
Go ahead. Yeah. Tell it again.
Well, I lived in Chicago for 9 years. And so Bill was, just north of there in Evanston or wherever he was there in the greater Chicagoland area. And you and your listeners and viewers may remember that back when President Obama was campaigning for the presidency, and of course the other side always tries to find something to get you on.
Oh,
and
right.
They got him on his preacher.
Yeah.
Who gave some messages that they didn't think Obama should be supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And they also talked about how Obama had a friend that was a revolutionary.
Yeah, that's right.
Countercultural revolutionary. And that was Bill.
Yeah.
They made a whole to-do over this dangerous revolutionary friend of Obama's. And no, it was just Bill Ayers.
Yeah.
Who is revolutionary in his thinking, but it's not the same as being a revolutionary.
Right.
The way that they meant it.
And it's sort of sad that the things he says and writes about are considered revolutionary.
Right.
Let's do these. I'll do these quotes. That seems like a good lead in. So this is actually, I'm going to skip around a little bit in the foreword of this book. He says, "Are teachers ready to create the dense and layered environment that will elicit discovery and surprise, construction and rethinking? Every child comes to school a question mark and an exclamation point. Her work, after all, is the assembling not only of a life, but of an entire world." And then I'm skipping a little bit. "Every school and each teacher must decide whether and then how, in the hard-edged spaces we often inhabit, to keep the questions and the passions alive, creating environments for exploration, for doing and making, for experimenting and hypothesizing and failing and succeeding, or to hammer the child into shape so that they leave her classroom no longer as a vital question mark or exclamation point, but as dull periods." That's sad that's revolutionary.
It is.
That's not just, the way we think about things. And I love that imagery, that, I guess, that punctuation metaphor, I think is powerful and apt.
Well, first of all, you're a language nerd, so of course
that is true. That is true.
Grammar.
That is true.
But true. Yes, it's brilliant the way he put all that, the way he framed all that. Was brilliant. And I think, yes, it's sad that it's revolutionary, but it's heartening to read the words because they really summed up what's so deep in my heart about early childhood education.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about what you think the period, the question mark, the exclamation point, and the period mean.
Yeah. Okay, first, I am going to, I was like, why does this sound different than usual? It's because my headphones aren't plugged into anything. So I'm going to take those off.
Richard is not usually his incredibly loud self.
I don't know what happened there. Okay, so what did you just ask me? Why I think that's
Well,
so
we were both
powerful?
taken by the imagery
Yeah.
of a question mark, an exclamation point, and a period.
Yeah.
And it might be worth fleshing that idea out a little bit for
Yeah.
your listeners.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think just the idea that if we break it down, so children come to us as question marks. That's their curiosity. That's their natural drive to explore. That's their biological drive to figure things out because they're so new to the world.
Right.
So they bring that to us just because that's the nature of being a brand new human in a big world.
Right.
And the exclamation point, I was thinking about that, and that is sort of, maybe that's more rhetorical than the question mark for me. Because not every child has my first thought is, oh, they're so excited about everything. They're so joyful. And not every child comes to us like that into our programs for various reasons. True. But I think we still can think of it in terms of something big. It's new. There are big opportunities everywhere. There's a it's gone, whatever I was going to say. And then when they bring in that idea of hammering them into a dull period, that's sort of an end. The period is the end of the sentence. The period says something new is happening now after this period, in a way that I don't know. I mean, a question mark certainly isn't the end.
And a dull period, not just a period.
Dull period is, sort of different from that exclamation mark. So point.
So if we think what we're doing is getting children ready for their colors, letters, and numbers and shapes, all we're doing is hammering them into a dull period for whatever is in their next sentence.
And that just, I don't know, that really encapsulated, exemplified, whatever fun word you want to throw in there, what hurts my heart so much about the topic of this book is school readiness. So in the name of getting them ready for something else, we have a choice of extinguishing what they bring and who they are for someone else's agenda and goals, or recognizing the bigger responsibility, the bigger opportunity of seeing the question marks and the exclamation points that they come to us as.
And the very first words you read, "Are teachers ready?" make this sentiment about the teachers, not about the children.
A whole different conversation about readiness.
Right. Yeah. We could go down that route in this conversation. But what it reminds us of is it's our responsibility, right? It's not, the child just shows up being themselves. It's not their responsibility. It's ours. And, I always say, you've heard me say it a million times on this podcast. Our job is not to teach just to teach colors, letters, numbers, and shapes, but to take someone who's been on the planet 1,000 days and say, welcome. I am one way that a human being looks. And I have to take responsibility for who I am around you, because I'm introducing you to what it means to be a human. This quote reminded me that I'm introducing you to what the world means. It's not just me and my way of being, but because this quote is also about spaces, the environments that we put them in, and how the environments are illustrative. I don't know if that's the right word, or exemplifying the greater world. And are we realizing that and really giving our spaces that power? Because I think most of the teachers don't realize that they're hammering out dull periods.
Right. I'm not. Well, you're right. We don't wake up thinking, how will I use my hammer with these children today? We don't wake up thinking, how can I extinguish what's natural that they're bringing and turn it into this much more compliant sort of broken spirit of a human and send them on down the assembly line. Nobody's making that. Well, I hope no one's making that intentional choice, but it's the system that we're in, and sort of the culture of school readiness that feeds that.
Well, and to use, this is where my mind went as I was listening to you speak, to use the term breaking the spirit in a positive way, if that's possible. As you were speaking, it reminded me of my community college students. And in some ways, they are so intent on products and colors and letters and numbers and shapes, and just certain that that's what early childhood education is about. And I have to break them of that to get them to see that what they're going to be responsible for is so much bigger than that.
Right.
Because it's hard to get past the way they've already been conditioned by age 17 or 18 or 19. Otherwise.
Yeah. Or in my case, late 20s, early 30s. That's where a lot of my students are coming from.
Right.
But I mean, those things can still happen.
Absolutely.
As when viewing children as question marks, or accepting and welcoming children as question marks and exclamation points. But I don't know. Sometimes I think with the folks that I work with, and I love my students. I hope this doesn't come across as critical. I'm trying to say
absolutely.
This is the system that they've been brought up in, essentially.
Went through.
So many of mine have already been working in early childhood.
That's right. Me too.
And the programs they're in are focused on this, this dull period kind of approach, because we've all been, told for so long that we have to grasp the education piece of our work to be respected and to be seen as professional. And so we have to adopt the image of education that other people recognize. And so that's school. And we just get so far down the path before we even realize that, oh, wait, maybe there was a different way to do
this is why Ayers is revolutionary, right? Because we were all brought up to follow the authorities and just assume, whole cloth, or however you say it, that those authorities know what the hell they're talking about and have the best interests in mind. And so we arrive in this field and are told about things called standards, right? And that's our goal, is to make sure we meet all of these standards. And then all of a sudden we're in this high pressure game, we young teachers, of meeting those standards, rather than, as Ayers says here, being present to the questions, and just experimenting, hypothesizing, failing, and succeeding. There's no value of failure. That's a revolutionary thought.
Yeah.
Because in the world of standards, there's only succeeding and meeting the standard.
Right.
It's all such bullshit.
Yeah. So children become assets or deficits to our progress as professionals, and to the system that they're also stuck in.
Right. And I'm a young teacher, and I come in and my new boss says, this is how you do it. This is what our goals are. And she's doing that. I mean, I remember now my time as a director and trying to convince my board that we didn't need 5 stars. It really was, we had so much more autonomy if we just stayed as a 4-star program, because to kneel at the shrine of standards meant that there was so much we couldn't do with those kids around the things that Bill just talked about in this quote. In order to, kneel at the shrine of standards and make sure that we're meeting every one of them in order to get our stars and therefore to get our funding. And as a young teacher, I don't know any of that stuff. I just know my boss said it's what we do.
Right.
But now my boss is under those other pressures. And it's all, the older I get, the more horrifying it becomes for me.
Right. And so I've been thinking about the word quality, the phrase high quality. I mean, on and off for a while, but this week a lot, because I went to this panel discussion on Monday about the child care crisis in our community, and that idea of high quality was thrown around a lot as the opposite. There's only we can only think in binary terms, right? It's either
Right.
Shit babysitting or high quality.
Right.
And there can't be any value in just babysitting. So anyway, I think I just talked myself out of where I was going with that. But where you were talking about the standards. My experience as a classroom teacher in programs that were standardized either through accreditation or quality rating, and as a director trying to move a staff through the process or move a program through the process, you're right. The people doing the work every day, I think this is what you were saying, people doing the work every day in the classrooms don't really often even know what those specific standards are,
or haven't given any thought
in a day-to-day kind of way.
Right.
They know what documentation they need to have and what stuff needs to be in the classroom when we're getting ready for the visit, but they don't always have access to kind of what's behind those criteria.
Right.
So
and the implications of them, how they can hurt those standards, and which children can be hurt by them, or at least which aren't supported by them. Because the other thing I would say, you mentioned the phrase high quality, and I can never be in one of your podcasts without always going down this road. Please. Which is that, and now sadly in this insane 2023 world we're in, that didn't even exist the last time you and I did a podcast.
That's true. Yeah.
High quality means white.
Yeah.
Right. And the phrase high quality, or the concept of high quality, exists within a white supremacist system that misidentifies what quality looks like for the majority of children in our care.
Yeah.
And doesn't take into account their unique, how they and their families might uniquely define quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you unpack
as
that
it becomes standardized? What's that?
Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I think sometimes I get feedback that when we use the phrase white supremacy, people don't connect, and they think, well, I've never been actively racist, so this isn't about me.
Right. Well,
or can we unpack that?
I have a memory of you and I mean, you were there at the time, of kind of being confronted with the phrase white supremacy by Juma Jordan. I don't know if I said her name correctly.
Yeah.
In something that she wrote, and I remember being very resistant to it.
Right, and I have been too.
Not me.
Yeah.
But it provoked my thinking, and it itched at the back of my brain, and I thought about it, and still do, that what she said, and just why did it provoke me so much? And it was on my journey to understanding that as a white person, white supremacy doesn't mean I and my group are in control of everything. It just means that we benefit from it and others don't.
Yeah.
And it's the others don't part that's so important. Just because one group can benefit from, for example, our early childhood standards, if we're not we all Americans, and there's half of the country right now is saying, well, we don't care about all those other people. We care about ourselves and making our lives great again. And but that's not the America that I was raised in. And so we all have to benefit, or none of us do.
Right.
That's always how I was raised.
Yeah.
And so to me, white supremacy just means, it's not that scary to me anymore. It just means some of us benefit and others don't.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, you have to relook at those standards and go, well, how do they not benefit? And what is it in the wording of that, or in the statement of that only allows some people to scaffold to the next thing, to gain the handhold on the next rung of a quality of life?
Yeah. I spent about 2 years in that defensive posture of how am I being white supremacist? Instead of asking, wait, what does it mean that I might be white supremacist?
Right.
Or that I might have tendencies that feed that white
Right.
is the norm, just that
White
white
supremacist
people
means
do
wearing a
things
white
with
hood.
equality. That's kind of where my brain was. And it took me a couple of years to get to a point, sadly, and sort of embarrassingly, to where I could think about it in terms of, oh wait, what did that mean? And oh yeah, she was
Right. Right. And I don't think, I get why you feel embarrassed, but I
yeah.
don't think the embarrassment serves anybody. I mean,
I guess what I mean is
we
I
were
wish
also
I
hindered by the way we were enculturated.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for helping.
Sure, I hope that helped.
Yeah, it did. I think it did. I hope it did. And I can't really remember where we were before that in terms of our actual topic and conversation. I mean, that fits because you were talking about quality. I guess the other thing with the phrase high quality that bothers me is it's about money, and it's about whether a program looks like a catalog
Right.
and has the materials from the catalog, and less about I love that Tiffany Pearsall talks about, or at least encouraged me at one point to think about safety and health instead of quality programs, thinking about emotionally safe programs and physically, beyond just, usually when we think about health and safety, we think about licensing and we think about sick policies, but just in terms of whole child well-being. And that helped me sort of, because I am a language nerd, using different words helps me think about things differently.
Right.
So if I think about high quality, I'm thinking, yeah, that's something you can buy because it looks like this.
Right.
And it excludes people who don't fit when we think about. So there's the physical environment of quality that looks like the catalog for me. And then
right. And do the children look like the children in the catalog?
Yes.
Happy and shiny and smiley and clean.
Yep. The environmental element of quality for me. Sometimes because it focuses on compliance and
that's right.
And sameness. So it naturally, of course, excludes some people,
right?
Some children and their families, and some teachers.
I like what you said about what Tiffany said about health and safety, and using those words as a different way to frame it. And as you were speaking, what occurred to me was that what we think as a teacher, we think, well, are all of the kids in my care healthy and safe? But to combat white supremacy or any group's supremacy, straight supremacy, whatever it is, right? Whatever is the group that has more power.
Middle class supremacy.
Say it again. Middle class?
Class supremacy. Yeah.
Class supremacy. Yeah. Not middle class. It doesn't exist anymore, basically. But
that's true.
But there's a distinction between asking, are all the kids in my class healthy and safe? And asking, are each of the kids in my class healthy and safe? And being able to look at each one as an individual and consider that question in an individualized way and realize that, well, 17 of my 20 children are healthy and safe, but actually 3 of them aren't. And it's okay for me to look at it through the gray areas and not just, yes, they're all healthy and safe, or no, they're not. There are more distinctions within there that I'm responsible for.
You mean outside of the space, outside of the early childhood space, they're not healthy and safe?
No. When you invoked the phrase health, safety, and health earlier, what did you mean? You talked about emotionally safe?
Whole child, their whole well-being being attended to.
Right. And so by asking that question in a non-supremacist way, we don't just look at our class as a whole. Are all my 3-year-olds doing okay? Sure. And instead, you have to take the energy and the effort to look at each individual child through all of their differences and uniquenesses to be able to answer that question for each of them separately.
Yeah. Well, I think, thank you for that. That, going back to the punctuation analogy. Yeah, I was thinking when I first read this in terms of the whole group, we smash a whole group, our system smashes, whatever. but individual interactions could be allowing some children to remain question marks and exclamation points, and others to be pounded, hammered into a dull period, depending on things like, is their behavior challenging for me? Not being reflective about whether you really like all children or not, those kinds of things. But also that white supremacist reality comes in here too.
I'm not sure I understand your initial statement there. Why would we allow some children to be pounded into dull periods?
Well, I don't know that we're saying, I don't know that it's as explicit as allowing it to happen, but the reality is in it happens. So say I have a group of, me and another teacher have a group of 10 2-year-olds that we work with every day. Okay. Some of them, we delight in their question marks and their exclamation points. Some of them, their question marks and exclamation points really bother us.
Yes.
And so we have to try and we put together a behavior plan or something. So, I mean, that's one example of how we might see it. And they need to be periods because they are not comfortable for me to deal with. Others are cute and clean and compliant and whatever. So they get to remain.
I mean, I hear your point. And
yeah.
So what that brings up for me is, as I look at the quote to my side here, we talked about the messiness of exploration, doing and making, experimenting, hypothesizing, failing and succeeding. And it's sort of like the best early childhood educators aren't there for the kids. They're there for the questioning and discovery and hypothesizing and failing. And then it doesn't matter whether you like the kid or not, because your value is on the process, not on how each individual child moves through the processes, because you value the process of discovery, and that's what guides you as a professional. And one of the things that comes up to me is, so for listeners and viewers of this podcast, what happens is, behind the scenes, is Heather sends you a quote, and Heather, being the queen nerd, has already pre-highlighted parts of the quote that she has taken a picture of or a screenshot of to send you. And then me, being the revolutionary that I am, I like to read the parts that are outside of she highlighted.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I thought was interesting was when Ayers talks about making a world, that our job is to create an entire world for children. What's right above that in the picture you took is it says, look, red and blue makes purple. This is different from knowing what primary and secondary colors are. This is constructing a world. And so if that's why I'm in this game, in this early childhood game, because I'm there and I realize the power I have to construct a world, then I go about my job very differently for all children or for each individual child, because I get that let's see what happens when you mix red and blue is very different than creating a lesson plan that says this week we're working on primary colors.
Yeah.
It's a complete shift in how I do my job, and therefore the experience the child will have.
Yeah.
They're entering into a world that they're co-creating.
Yeah. That, that part did make me think about you, because you talk a lot about the job of an early childhood, whatever we want to call ourselves, practitioner, professional is to help children make sense of the world. And I think that's different than helping them learn about the world, right? Which is the phrase I hear a lot, or and that's kind of, I guess I'm just restating what you just said. I guess what I'm saying is I've heard you use that a lot in different contexts, and it's a really interesting and valuable shift from thinking about I'm in this because I want to make a difference, or I want to help children learn, or children are just sponges, and I want to be part of helping.
Right. Soak me up.
So come up, I guess, but when we make that, again, and maybe it's just a language shift that then impacts our thinking process. But when we think instead about helping them understand the world, or kind of guiding them through the world that's brand new, it does maybe tend more towards process than product that way.
Well, yeah, because the phrase making sense has no product. It's an ever ongoing process of making sense and then making greater sense and then finding new questions and incorporating those in and making more sense of that. There is no final product for making sense. Yet our teachers in our field are all find themselves in this product-oriented profession where they have to produce these products. And so they have to take this really challenging stand to stand for process and discovery, even though they're being pressured to create answers and products and end results to produce so that their center can get funding or whatever. And so that's a really revolutionary act to stand in that place.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull it back to sort of more out of the theoretical and into the daily practice.
Sure.
What I hear now is, sometimes as I listen to new ideas or as I talk myself and listen to myself, I hear the yeah buts and the but what abouts that I might hear from someone in class or when I was a director or from a co-teacher. So what I think, what I was hearing as I was listening to you was the person who says that's so much harder. That's not achievable in the real world because that's not how it works. And so I want to unpack that a little bit, maybe. Whether it's, well, my director expects worksheets and tick marks on a checklist, so that's all I can focus on and that's what I have to do, and anything else is harder.
Well, I was about to say something and then you used the exact word I was going to say. You said that's all I can focus on.
Yeah.
And so as you were speaking, I was sitting here thinking about how the yeah buts come from all or nothing thinking. We either do all of what Richard just said, the pie in the sky thing that Richard just said, or we can't. We do none of it because my boss says X, Y, and Z. But the truth is, we're with children every day for 10 to 12 months, for X number of hours a day. There's room for all of it. Yes, do some worksheets. That's fine. If you want to be really canny about it, put the worksheets in your writing center and don't sit everyone down to do them. But if that's what your boss is saying, that's fine. That's 20 minutes out of your day. There's still hours left for discovery and process and questions and exploration. It's not an all or nothing proposition. There's room for both.
Right.
And it's a shame that we have to do the other shit.
Yes.
We do. So fine, make it work to the best that we can within the limitations we have.
Yeah. I think there are some elements of focusing more on process and less on product that make our work easier eventually. Our day-to-day, make it feel less effortful, I guess is what I'm saying.
What do you mean?
Well, I think if we feel like we need to be in charge of everything and we need to direct everything and everything has to tie to a standard,
right.
Then it's easier to feel like that feels more controllable, maybe. Maybe I'm talking myself out of this as I try to unpack it. We put a lot of effort into trying to make everybody fit the standard, I guess. Maybe that's what I want to say. Whereas if we just sort of practiced, and it's a skill like everything else, and it's not today I'm product and tomorrow I'm process, like you were just talking about. It's bits and pieces. But if we changed one thing, like I'm going to be, I realize that all of my focus is going on the 9 to 11 stuff, and I have to control the 9 to 11 stuff. And
What does that mean, 9 to 11 stuff?
that's when learning happens, Richard. 9 to 11 in the morning. That's
Oh,
learning
who
time.
dreamed that bit of bullshit up?
Well, I don't know, but that's the reality that I see in a lot of places and conversations.
Well, and just to be
But
clear for your listeners, funding is tied to that. The
yeah,
reason we say the 9 to 11 stuff, I
yeah.
pretended to not know what you meant, but
Oh, I see, I see, I see.
yeah. But the reason we say that is because the people who are giving us money say, you need to prove that learning is happening from X to Y, and that's usually 9 to 11.
Right.
But of course, we know learning is happening from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep.
Yes, yes. Thank you for
But anyway, go ahead.
No, I think that I feel like then that becomes all encompassing, and it's easier to feel like you're failing if things aren't running smoothly from 9 to 11, and we look for something to blame for the failure, and that tends to be the children who aren't just falling in line and doing what I need them to do during that learning time. And that's when a lot of that hammering into a dull period might happen. But if we broaden and we look at all day, and we look at the ways that we can set things up in the environment for that exploration, that doesn't necessarily require us to be right there in control of everything, eventually we feel like our days are less effortful.
Right.
But that's harder because it requires that abstract thinking a little bit that so many of us have been trained out of.
And it takes a leap of faith.
And it takes, yes, thinking.
A leap of faith that children are capable and competent,
yeah,
and are fully competent, fully capable of doing what they need to do when they need to do it.
Yeah.
And that's a very different way of doing our jobs than saying, my boss says I have to get them to this destination by this point.
Yeah.
Which of course is the system they're going to be into in a year from now,
right.
The K-12 system,
right.
Where you have to get children to a certain point by a certain time so that they can be ready for the next point
right.
that you're required to make. But that's why I love early childhood education, and it is a place for revolutionary thinking.
Yeah.
Because we're not bound by that fully.
And without saying, this is not about the teachers in the K-12 system, but the K-12 system itself
right.
is a tough, problematic system.
Right.
So, some of those folks are revolutionary in their own way in that system, but I'm so uncomfortable with the sort of the dominant discourse that because things are going to be hard and sort of shitty when they get there, we should be making things hard
and shitty
and
to
shitty
prepare them.
It's like, so Lisa Murphy always says, or used to say, if I know that a famine is coming, I don't start starving children now so they're ready for what it feels like to live in famine. And of course that's hyperbolic, but that doesn't make it wrong.
Right. Well, the way I say it, the way I frame it is to say life, whether it's in kindergarten or as an adult, is all about problems that need to be solved. And so if I can help them spend their first years on the planet solving problems and becoming creative problem solvers, then first of all, it breaks my heart to send any child off to kindergarten or first grade, not because of those teachers, but because the system is so against them. It's heartbreaking. After you've spent a year of play and love and caring and all those things, and you're sending them off into something completely different. But the only way that I make peace with that is to say, if I spend my time with them, helping them to become creative problem solvers, then they'll arrive in kindergarten or first grade. And what they'll find, which are desks in a row and required worksheets and all that homework and all that, they'll just be problems to be solved. And they'll be able to navigate that.
Yeah.
I can't prepare them for the famine by starving them, but I can prepare them for what's coming, for the problems that are coming, by helping them become problem solvers.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it too. It's just a sad problem. This whole readiness problem is sad for everyone except the folks who are profiting off of it.
That's right.
So that Capitalism.
by the way, this is why I love, and I don't know if this is a way of wrapping up today's thing, but this
No.
is why I love, and it's been way too long and we need to do this
I
more
know.
often,
This
because I
whole
love
conversation, I've
speaking
been
with
like,
you.
we need to do this a lot more.
We do, because
Yeah.
how often do I get to speak with a kindred spirit who believes the same things that I believe about early childhood education? Not very often in this world. And
Yeah.
so it's just so validating to talk with you.
Oh, that's nice, because I always feel like you think I'm full of shit.
I do, but that's a whole other conversation.
No, you're just a really good uh critical friend, and I don't mean that you criticize me. I mean you help me to think more deeply about the stuff that I spout.
I do criticize you. If I don't, I've not been doing it right.
Well, okay, maybe okay, never mind. Tiffany will
All right.
still be my critical friend, and
But no, I hear you.
you'll just be Richard.
And
So
I'm
no,
glad to be with you.
this was a really uh good conversation for me to be part of. So I hope that people who are listening feel like it's a good conversation to have listened to.
Yeah, me too. It was really thought-provoking.
Sparks some things. Yeah. I do really recommend this book. But it's
The one you haven't fully read yet?
yeah, I mean everything I've read is really good. I'm halfway through, and everything I've read is powerful and thought-provoking. Of course, yeah, it's validating because it's about rethinking readiness. So there's a lot of stuff in there about why are we still doing things this way.
Right.
But maybe get it from a library, because it's an expensive one.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know why I felt like I needed to say that, but we had such a lovely ending going.
You totally ruined it.
With our little intellectual nerdy love fest that we had going. So thank you, Richard, for this conversation.
You're welcome.
And just always being fun to talk to and challenging.
I look forward to the next time.
Yeah, me too. Gotta look for some highlights, see what we can talk about.
Yes.
And thank you all for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Bye.
Bye.